Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness, we've had some technical issues and I lost Geoff now, but I want to get on as soon as possible. I mean, this has been kind of a rough ride. There's something to be said about Mercury retrograde. So while we're waiting for Geoff to join us, and oh gosh, I hope he does, otherwise we'll have to reschedule this. Let me just say that, oh good, he's here. And Geoff, we're on. So I'm already talking and hoping everybody's with us. So you hear me, right, Geoff?
Correct.
All right, great. So I'm just letting everybody know, well, that we're here. This is Life Out Loud, and boy, are we living life out loud right now. Fully living. My heart's beating so fast, and I feel quite alive. And that's what this is about living fully. And boy, my blood is pumping, telling me that I'm quite alive. So what is this show? This show is something I've created to bring people together to talk about real issues, to talk about transformation. I am reaching out to some of the most wonderful people on the planet, like Geoff, who I'll introduce to you in a moment, who is a leader, who's making a difference in people's lives. And so this is my platform right now to reach out to you guys, to have conversations. There's a chat box. You're welcome to write questions and give me the thumbs up that you could hear me. And have some real dialogue about what's important, what's working for us and what's not. So I welcome you. I'm hoping you're all still here waiting for me to get on. And so without further ado, let me tell you about my guest tonight. My guest, Geoff, and thank you for being so patient with me, Geoff. I have no idea how I even got on. But Geoff Lawton, oh my goodness. I'm happy to say that he is a friend, a colleague, and doing some really remarkable work in the world. But it wasn't always like that. Many years ago, he was in the corporate world, and as he writes in his bio, was kind of the walking dead, comatose, and not very happy. Very successful in a lot of ways, but not living a life fulfilled and feeling great. In fact, in his 30s, he even had physical and emotional breakdowns, which really brought him to this place of inner working and figuring out, his insides and what it is about life and what it is he wants. So he started the healing journey, and now he gets to offer it to other people. I want to read a little bit about him. So he, for over 20 years now, he's been coaching people back towards their connection to their purpose, just like he got reconnected to his, their inner power, their uncompromising passions, and to their spirit's calling. And he does this for people in their relationships, their families, their work, and into an uncompromising commitment to living all that, living their spirit full out. And that's what this show is about, is living full out. And this is what he's doing with people, helping people day to day. And he's been doing this for years now. And one of the things he wrote also I want to share with you is, I have fully claimed and reconnected to the truth that I had always wanted to do anything I could to help people feel loved, important, alive, reconnected to their own divinity, and to be able to feel and live their own spirit as fully and out loud as they are willing. I have since dedicated my life to that purpose. So, wow, that's who I have on this show. And he's just written this book called Built to Last. I have to admit, I didn't finish the whole thing. I tried for today. It's a great book. We're going to obviously be referring to it. And today's talk is the 3 crucial elements for the dream design of a relationship built to last. And he should know, because he's been in a relationship with a beautiful woman for many, many years. So he's walking his talk, sharing his gifts. He's got golden nuggets, and we're going to hear a whole bunch now. So welcome, Geoff. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here. Great to have an opportunity to not only live out loud, but in the moment.
Woo!
That's live TV, or whatever we call it on the internet.
Yeah. So, let's, if you will, you weren't always at this place in your life. I mean, as I was reading and researching, it wasn't always roses. It wasn't always peace and the fantasy fairy tale life.
Right.
How was it in the beginning with your wife, and how was it the co-creating of the relationship you have now to bring to this point?
Well, how it was in the beginning really involved, when I look back on it, and we've been together for 33 years. And we met by accident. We met at a time where neither one of us were really looking for a relationship.
Huh.
So because I talk about this a lot, and we just had our 30th wedding anniversary. And we were looking back at how friends were asking, how'd you two meet? How'd you get together? And one of the things that really holds true for me is that the very first thing was an ability to get beyond what we thought. And that's a big thing for me, is getting out of the head and into the heart, and then allowing the head to help the heart get what it wants.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of reasons why Sarah and I were we were never on anybody's radar as the kind of people that would get together. She was 11 years older than I was, and still is, I might add.
It works like that.
And she had a then 8-year-old son from her first marriage. Had not been, her divorce had only happened maybe a few months before we met. I was still kind of in a 3-year moratorium on relationships and women, because I recognized a lot of patterns that I had been doing in my previous relationships that reminded me way too much of my mom and how she was in relationship. So even in my early 20s, I could kind of figure out, I think I need to do a little work and look at that. And we just met under the weirdest and most unpredictable circumstance. And pretty quickly, we noticed that I noticed, I shouldn't talk for her, I noticed I had a real attraction to her. And, if you looked at the age difference, if you looked at, I was just out of college in my first job, was not prepared at 23 when we met, 24 when we became a couple. I wasn't prepared to be a stepfather to an 8-year-old kid. And so, but the one thing that would never go away was the attraction. And mine for her, if you were to talk to her, she'd say that she thought I was nice and, enjoyed being with me. For me, I knew, within a couple of dates, if you can call them that, I knew, all right, I really want to get to know this woman more. And so it really was about listening to my body. Because if I'd listened to my head, if I'd listened to my family, if she had listened to her family, because her family was none too happy about her being with a guy that much younger than she was, in his first job. I didn't own a car. So all the things that her mom and dad, being of a different generation, kind of looked for who would be a good man for their daughter, I didn't fit any of them. So we really began by trusting our hearts. I also, in hindsight, when I look back at the beginning, I wouldn't have languaged it this way back then, because I didn't know then what I know now. But there was really a soul connection, a soul knowing that while she wouldn't have put it in that kind of framework, it was like we'd been together before. We'd been together in probably multiple lifetimes. I believe in multiple lifetimes. And it just wouldn't go away. And we even had a little period in about the 7th or 8th month we were together. We had a brief breakup. And I actually got completely disengaged and unattached. And then after about 5 months of not seeing each other, talking to each other, we had a rendezvous. And in the, I mean, literally the first minute, when I opened the door, I invited her to come have dinner with me at my new place. I opened the door, we locked eyes, both of us are bawling like babies, and we haven't been apart since. So it was the kind, it is the kind of love that, you know, nothing has been able to rip apart. And
That's just an amazing, that's just so beautiful. You know, one of the things in the book you talk about is the difference between lust and love and compatibility, and what I'm hearing is such a deep heart connection that you can't even put into words, and maybe back then you may not have called it what you're calling it now, but that there was something else going on, and that you really were listening to it. You weren't listening to the outside of the age difference and what, you know, the parents were saying. And,
right.
and here you had that break too. And in that moment, what I'm hearing is there was such a deep knowing that it was just inevitable for you to just keep going at that point.
Yeah, it felt bigger than us.
Yeah.
And certainly with many things that have happened over the time we've been together. I mean, we've been through very, very difficult times, not so much with each other, but stuff with our kids and life and career change for both of us, because I was in the corporate world when we first got together. So we've gone through major life, I don't know, I guess you'd call them life crises and things like that, you know, are no different than other people go through, but they were big. And a lot of things that should have wiped our marriage out never have.
So you stuck with it. And I think, you know, again, I'm going to keep referring to the part of the book I read because there's so many golden nuggets in there, which is the fairy tale relationship, the happily ever after la la land, and then the reality of being with this person in a life where shit happens and you have to, you know, commit to this reality, you know, dealing with the things that come up, and be able to work it together in the most conscious, loving way. I mean, it sounds like you guys were in the trenches, and one of the things that saddens me is this kind of throwaway mentality in our culture, that it's like, oh, it's not working, boom, you know, I'm not happy, boom, it's too much work, boom, versus, okay, let's be really honest with what it is we want. Let's know what we want. Let's talk about what we want and do this conscious dance so that we can actually have a go at it, that we can actually have sustainability in our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, the tragedy, and I want to be clear that there are certainly many, many, many couples who have no business being together.
Yep.
And oftentimes because they did confuse lust, attraction for compatibility, and we're meant to be together.
Yep.
And so, you know, there are many, many cases like that. But when you have something that transcends lust, and believe me, I'm all for lust.
It's a good thing.
Lust and sex are awesome. But at the early part of a relationship, when there's really this huge magnetic attraction, then it gets easy to think, you know, in capital letters, this is it.
Yeah.
He's it, she's it. And one of the things that is interesting, which I have not thought about until right now, the first time I ever met her, I thought she was beautiful. But there was not an immediate, oh my God, I want to hop in the sack with this woman. There was just an appreciation for her beauty and her energy, and her heart was obvious right from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't go right to being sexual. We went to getting to know each other more, and probably because she might have been wondering, what the hell am I doing even liking this kid?
Yep.
And I'm over in my side of the fence going, oh my God, my entire adolescent fantasy about, you know, finding a Mrs. Robinson that was going to seduce me and, take me in her arms. For me, that was all coming true, but having a child definitely raised the ante. And so, to your point, what I came to learn about 8 years in is everything that might have been unappealing, difficult, that I grew to, well, I don't like this, or I want more of that. I really did figure out, thank God, at a relatively young age, that whatever wasn't working was going to be what wasn't going to work in any other relationship I had.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
The people who will come see me or call me up and they want to talk about what's going on, and I'll say, well, how many relationships have you had? Well, I've had about 8 or 9. And how long a period? Maybe a couple of years. And what was the common denominator that you noticed? None of them really fit for me. Okay, well, maybe you're the common denominator, not the other thing. So wherever you go, there you are, right? So that is going to be...
And the whole thing is how you do one thing, you do everything. And to be able to see that there's this overlay of patterns and all the past stuff, all the programming that sometimes we're not seeing, the stuff that's in shadow that just keeps spilling out. And until we can identify that exactly wherever we go, there we are, we're continuing to just keep doing the same patterns over and over again and having the same exact relationship over and over again as well.
Right. So when the going begins to get tough, particularly in the early, maybe year or two, if you make it that long, then the opportunity that we've taken advantage of multiple times is, okay, we may or may not be meant to be together in the long haul. But if our hearts got us together,
yep.
And when things begin, if the honeymoon wears off, you're not humping like rabbits anymore, and you're beginning to, really begin noticing who you're really with, and I mean that in the best way.
Yep.
Then whether it works out in the long haul or not, it is the best sandbox to really not only learn how to do relationship and learn what really works or not, but as you were mentioning a few minutes ago, what it means to really be committed.
Yep.
Commitment is not, well, I'm committed, except when it isn't convenient, or
right, as long as it's not too hard.
Right. So it's not too hard, or I'm committed even when it's not fun. And that really is the opportunity that people miss, is what could you learn and how could you grow? And that requires letting go of a pretty deeply enculturated, happily ever after orientation. You're gonna complete me, gag me.
And that whole concept of vulnerability, if we really, again, it comes back to what is it we really want? I mean, if we really want that deep connection and a healthy relationship, then intimacy, the ability to let us see each other in the healthy ego and the shadow ego, and to have those conscious conversations about how do we hold each other when we wig out a little bit, and what is it that we're needing, and how can we continue to support each other. That was one of the things being a shadow worker, I love that you were talking about embracing the shadow. It's not about, okay, we're just going to focus on the healthy ways of being with each other, but to create this place, this playground, as you say, to bring all of us to the table and consciously talk about it and work with each other so that we can get to the highest of high. And if we're in our healthy ego, can connect to spirit or our higher power, whatever you want to call it, so that we can have this spirit-led relationship, which is what, well, I know you and I talk about a lot, and what it is that we believe brings us closer to spirit, which is relationship and growth through relationship.
Yeah, and you're reminding me of a definition of love that I heard a few months back from a buddy of mine who also does relationship work with people. And he said, love is the balancing of energies, if I'm remembering the quote correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the shadow and the light, if you want to call that part of us that, without either of them, we're only halfway actualized.
Mm.
And so the kind of Hollywood version of relationship really enculturates us into believing that if you find the right person, you're going to be happy, you know, again, you're going to live happily ever after. That's a real soapbox hot button for me.
Mm.
Number two, when it gets tough, well, maybe give it one try, but it should be easy.
Right.
Relationships should be easy. And that's just simply, to use a technical term, horseshit.
I was going to say bullshit. I was right there with you.
Pick your animal. And so the thing is if you can't love my darkness, you really can't love my light. Because then I'm only half a thing. And my buddy used the analogy of the earth, you know, half the time, half the earth is in the dark.
Yeah.
And the other half is in the sun. So I really think that another thing people need to know when they're really kind of falling for somebody and they're thinking about whether they want to be in a relationship, you know, knowing about the shadow ego is important. Mm-hmm. Also, you know, really understanding that when that part of you and or your partner begins to show up, you mentioned, I think you used the words working with it, through it together. Mm-hmm. And here's one of the places where people shoot themselves in the foot. Working with it and through it, supporting each other, does not mean taking responsibility for fixing. I mean, right. Even considering that your partner's broken. Mm-hmm. It is actually kind of supporting them in being able to do their work, because whenever your shit or my shit comes up, it's our work to do, right? So our partner can support us by empowering the biggest part of us to come in and help work with those, you know, kind of unresolved younger pieces that so much of the shadow shows up like. That would be chapter 8 in my book. How many people are you really sleeping with anyway? I love that chapter.
I haven't gotten there yet, but I understand the concept for sure. I mean, that's what it's about. You know, how many people are in bed with you? How many people are sitting at the dining room table? I mean, when you talked about that one experience you had where I think your wife was doing the dishes and you had just had a full day's work, and all she did was say, when you finish eating, if you could take out the garbage, and this full reaction happened inside of you. And then all the programming from the past of how you're supposed to be, how you're not supposed to be, and how it was moving through you for days, that if we can be conscious of those shadows and be able to create this safe container, this solid sacred space with this partner where we can say, you know what, when this happens, this is sometimes what happens with me. This is my past. This is what we can do to support it or not support it, but to be able to call it what it is, to bring it out of shadow, and so that we can really allow it to be present, but not overtake us and take us out of the game and come out sideways with our partner.
Yep. And to be able to do that, it really helps if you understand that your partner is never the cause of what you're feeling.
Right.
And one thing that you made me think of, kind of apropos of the title of this talk tonight, dialogue, you know, if you're going to really embrace the idea that a relationship built to last really requires a design element. You know, if you're going to build a dream home, you have a plan, you have drawings, you have an architect that designs the house based on what you've told him or her that you're wanting, how you want it to look, how you want it to feel. And one of the things that you have to have in a really conscious, sacred design is you've got to be really clear what you're in for. What I mean by that is you got to know, what kind of relationship do you want? Do you want a relationship that is just fun? Let's just have a good time. We don't need to get heavy. We don't need to, God, we don't have to work hard. We just should be able to have a fun time. Or maybe you want a relationship, and you would know this if you kind of looked at your relationship history. Maybe what you're really wanting is you want a relationship to give you a sense of security and stability. And so you don't want a relationship where you're going to have a lot of conflict. You just want everything to feel good, comfortable. We're good with each other. I feel solid with him or her. But really underlying that is the shadow of, don't make me deal with anything that's going to be painful, enraging, whatever. Don't ask me to deal with my stuff. So I also call that the walking on eggshells relationship. But then there's other people that, and I would have known myself, well, that's not true. Even as a teenager, I always went deep with my girlfriends in high school and college, but I wouldn't have labeled myself as, oh, I want to be in relationships so that I can grow. At that younger age, I wanted true love. I totally was into the Hollywood thing, and lust and great sex and all that.
All the good stuff.
Good stuff. But if you're really somebody that is, I don't want to be arrogant, but if you're conscious, I mean, that's relative, that's a relative term, but if you really want to be your version of awake and conscious, then you know that the way you're going to get there is involving a lot of growth, pain, disappointment, things not going the way that you want them to go. And if you're not in for that, you'd much rather have that, carefree, playful relationship, or let's just mutually agree, even if we don't say it out loud, we're just going to keep each other from ever having to go anywhere near that shadow stuff. And let's do everything we can to have fun, but not upset each other. If you want either of those, that's totally fine. But if you get together with somebody who's all about the growth, then you're really going to have problems that could very easily and likely be insurmountable. Not because you're bad people, maybe not even because it isn't true that you don't love each other.
Yep. But
you want really fundamentally different kinds of relationships, and you have very different reasons.
And that's just, again, that's the foundation before we even enter into a relationship, to really know what it is we want. Because if it, talking architecturally, if my blueprint is a cozy little cabin in the woods, far away from the city, and I meet someone who wants the hustle and bustle of the city, and we fall in love, energetically, we're going to be very different on different pages. And so, we can have all the great communication and love and lust that we want, but if we have a different blueprint of our hearts and what it is we're really wanting in the relationship, there's going to be struggle. And so, yeah, I completely agree with you that, to really have that awareness. And again, it doesn't matter, whatever you choose, just as long as or at least you have an inkling, and you have those conversations too. Because in the beginning, like you said in the book, all the hormones are going, you're, doing the do, as you call it. Well, have some conversations between doing the do about really seeing what it is you're dreaming together. What is your soul yearning for? And is it a fit? Because we really can end up with a lot of heartache if we're on very different pages.
Well, yeah, and you're really talking about compatibility in a way. And yes, I mean, I'm amazed at, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've worked with couples and individuals of all, I've avoided the teenage market, but, I've worked with people that range from in their 20s up to their 70s. And it always amazes me, when they're coming, because usually, their relationship is in breakdown and they're trying to figure out whether it can be saved, if they want to save it, etc.
Yeah.
And I'll ask them, well, what did you want from a relationship? Why did you guys get together originally? And when I go a bit deeper, it's pretty amazing how many people never had those kinds of conversations.
I know.
And man, it comes back and bites you on the butt.
Yep. And it's so sad. I mean, here are these people that love each other. And I mean, I'll use me as an example. I mean, I was with my husband for 20 years. And on the outside, people were very shocked when we ended our relationship, because it seemed like we were so happy. And there was a lot there that was amazing. But now that I'm away from it, I can see that we had such different blueprints. We had such different ways of looking at the world, what it is we wanted. I mean, there was overlap. That's why we stayed together for so long, and there was deep love. But at the end of the day, we were on different pages. And that's why we're still friends. That's why we still connect, because there was something really beautiful there and still is. But as a partnership, we never had those talks. And I was one of those people that walked on eggshells, because I was so scared of that conflict. As you said, conscious conflict is great. Well, there was no conscious conflict. I was being afraid of disappointing my mom and my dad through my husband, and God knows what he was working through, and that's his to explore. But it was sad, it was sad when you think about when you're with somebody and you have this history and the children, and at the end of the day, we never really had that deep communication of, what is it that we're really wanting, and are we really compatible? Never happened. We're not taught to do that in this culture. And then we thankfully have people like you and me that people can go to and say, hey, I'm unhappy. What am I missing here?
Right. Well, and you reminded me just then of a very important point that kind of is related to compatibility versus lust. And that's that, a lot of people, we all kind of had some perhaps role model, positive role model, or unfortunately, maybe a relationship you see in a book or a movie or a TV show. Oh, I want that. And one of the things that I hear people say a lot is, well, my parents had a really good marriage. They were together, or they're still together. They've been together 50 years, or they were together for 50 years. And longevity means nothing.
Yeah, doesn't mean anything.
My parents, were together for 51 years, and they really didn't like each other much for 49 of them. And so a lot of people are together, but, the reason the book is called Built to Last, Designing and Maintaining a Passionate, Loving, and Lasting Relationship, is that the quality of the relationship is crucial. And in that first 8 to 14 months that we are with somebody we're really attracted to, one of the reasons we don't have those conversations that we were talking about a minute ago is because the chemical and hormonal stuff going on is so overpowering. It's like endorphin heaven.
Yes.
And who wants to mess with that? And yet, for those who might be watching who are over 23 or maybe over 30, if you're in between relationships or you're in one that's kind of hit a plateau, it's never too late to redesign.
Yep.
Much less design a new one, but to redesign the one you're in. And if you don't do that, life will give you plenty of opportunities. The other thing you mentioned that I just popped into my head that I don't want to forget to say, how would your choices have been different, perhaps? You know, as you were mentioning your ex-husband.
Yeah.
How would any of our choices of who we're with be different if we knew up front that whatever your mom and dad never have handled or handled, if one or both of them are gone, if you knew that what they never handled, you're going to be trying to handle for them in your relationships? I think that might be a little bit of a cautionary, oh my God.
Well, let me speak to that and then move to another piece. You know, that's the beauty of the relationships. One of the pieces, I think, is to heal some of the old programming, the woundology, if you will, from our past. You know, my fear of disappointing mom or dad, being able to find my voice and my power within the confines of the relationship, which was really scary for me as a child. So, I mean, you know, not knowing, you know, like I was in my 20s when we got together. So how much did I know of myself? And many of us, how many years, if we're lucky, 30s, 40s, 50s, we actually can go into these places and realize that the programming, the experiences we've had have really shaped us, continue to shape us, and we're acting out of that. So, you know, I'm grateful I know all that. Otherwise, I could be easily beating myself up like a lot of people can about, oh, the relationship that went badly. You know, it was what it was because I knew what I knew. I learned what I learned, and here I am in a different place, thankfully. One of the things I want to just point out is we started late, and I just want to check in with you, Geoff. Can we go to like maybe, let's see, what time zone you're, can we go to 7:20 your time? Is that okay with you?
Absolutely. I could talk about this stuff all night.
Yeah, so can I. Okay, guys, we're going to get your sleeping bags and your cup of tea. Because I still want to, I want to get to the title of this. I want to know the 3 crucial elements to building the lasting relationship. And I also want to let people know that are watching that at the end of our time, Geoff has some really awesome bonus material that he's going to give you access to. I don't have the link just yet. We'll have it later. And so stay tuned for that. But there's still more to talk about. I mean, oh my God, Geoff, we could talk forever. I mean, this is life. This is, you know, relationships, it's everything. And right. what we bring to our relationships affects everything. And how we are in our relationships certainly brings us the fulfillment or lack thereof when we leave the house. So this is so important. So Geoff, the 3 crucial elements. Number 1, what would you like to share with us?
Well, it's something I mentioned a little bit ago. One of them is you really have to have some idea of what kind of relationship you want and why.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you mentioned a couple minutes ago when you and your ex-husband met, you were in your 20s. I was in my 20s when Sarah and I met. But like I imagine is the case for you, if you grow up in a really dysfunctional family, which whether anybody wants to admit it or not, is probably about 98% of, you know, American culture at least, then you can think you want a relationship to be the complete opposite of what you grew up with. So even though you might be young, you're not too young to begin. You may not have the breadth of knowing that, you know, people your age, my age have, because we've lived longer. But really to just, even if you're 20, and I'm part of why I wrote the book, is I've got grandchildren that are approaching that in another few years, and nephews that are already, you know, early 20s and engaging in relationship. And no matter how young you may be, just even asking, well, why do I want a relationship? And to give yourself the most honest answer you can.
Right.
If you'd asked me that when I was 20, I would have probably said, well, love, and I want to be loved, and I want to get laid as much as possible. Now, if you ask me that at 30 or 40, or, you know, I'm just a couple of years away from 60, what I want in relationship keeps evolving. So you need to have
Exactly. It keeps changing. What our wants, where we are in relation to the other, life keeps coming and we keep shifting. Exactly.
so you need to have some idea of what you want now.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing, as you just pointed out, knowing that that's constantly organic. And if you're really drawn to keep it always feeling the same, even in the early days, there's a red flag that you're going to be in trouble, because unless you really want a relationship that never changes for 40 years, then you've got to be willing to periodically go through. I'm leaping into maintenance for a moment. You got to be willing to go through reassessing why.
Yep.
I love you, but why are we together now? What does our relationship serve now? So that's the first thing.
Yep.
Is having some kind of grasp on that. And as you mentioned, talking about it. And maybe that's 1A, is you got to talk. And you got to be talking, again, no matter how old you are, you want to be talking about more than just, what do you want to do tonight? Then, shall I go to number 2?
You can in a second. So yes, I mean, that there is that communication, and then there is the limitation of our age, so it's sort of a yes and yes, even if you're in your 20s, we can still ask those questions and engage in those conversations. And there's something to be said about, the first 30, 40 years of trying to figure it all out within ourselves in relationship to everybody else. I mean, in shadow work, we actually say the first 40 years is self-building. It's our time of figuring out who we are in relation to the world and trying to fit in and figure stuff out. So it's like, on the one hand, we want to have these conscious relationships and be fulfilled and have those really rich conversations in the beginning, so we know as much as we can know. And at the end of the day, we're still growing up, 20s and 30s, trying to figure out who we are. Because when I look back in my 20s, I had no idea what I really wanted. And a lot of my choices had come out of fear. A lot of my choices came out of fear. But again, that was part of my learning to bring me to this place that I am now, which of course is that whole thing of relationships are the playground for our growth. And if we aren't growing, we're going to have some suffering along the way, because it's going to come at us in some way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Life will definitely teach you whether you go kicking and screaming or not.
Yes. So number 2, thank you.
No worries. I love what you just shared. Number 2 is what chapter 1 of the book goes into in more detail. You have to really gauge compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be looking beyond strictly kind of chemical and energetic attraction. You want to be looking, again, regardless of age, what is really compatible for me. I mean, yes, relationship at its best involves compromise, finding each of your own sovereignty and learning how to be interdependent rather than codependent. So it really means you have to know you.
Exactly.
As best you can at whatever, moment in time,
right,
you're beginning a relationship or considering beginning one. Who are you now? What really matters to you? And to know how to find that out with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the pieces of the gift content that, I'll give people the link verbally, and then we can add it in however we do that. But there's a great little gift in there that's a sheet of questions that you want to be asking in the very, very early part of the relationship. Then there's some questions to ask each other when you kind of decided, I think we're serious, we want to be in a relationship. And so
it's not a first date thing?
No, that would probably be a buzzkill. But so there's questions for like 3-4 months in, when by then
nice.
you're kind of gauged whether, and then there's some that you want to be asking about 9 months to a year in. And they're great. That I like that period because that's usually when hormone mania begins to dissipate.
Right.
You're going to get to really look at who am I with, really.
Right. Right.
So that can help people with that process. The third thing that I think is really an indispensable part of how to design a really, really great relationship is you have to talk about values.
Absolutely.
Right? That's a huge missing piece. And again, something that even people that are middle-aged, that are getting into maybe their second or third or fifth relationship, they don't talk about it. I've also kind of been shocked about when I ask people, well, do you have any idea what your values are?
Yep.
And then I kind of have to point out that peace, justice, and the American way are probably not going to be all that helpful in terms of relationship values and relationship compatibility.
Geoff, I just want to add that this is something that I work with people so often, and it is shocking to me how little time we spend on really knowing ourselves and what we do hold valuable. And like there's an exercise that I do, I learned it from Tony Robbins, but to make the list of all the things that, the feelings and the experiences that are important to us, but then to actually figure out what is most valuable. Is this more valuable than this? Is this more important than this? And to get your top 5 value systems, like to really know, like if travel and adventure and living big and live and wild and crazy is important to you, and somebody else is, well, I want to stay home and raise kids and have a partner and and have that sanctity in that way. I mean, there's going to be a big clash. But before we could even engage in conversation with anybody, again, it's coming back to who are we? And to add on to what you said before, who are we now? Because, as a single woman right now, I'm asking myself that. I'm like, okay, I'm almost 52. I haven't dated in 25 years. Who am I now? And what's important to me now? Before I, start going into a relationship, it's like, I need to know that. Otherwise, I'm just going to be doing the same dances I've done in the past.
Yep. And, to the degree, given the work you do, given the degree to which, those shadow parts and, young, unresolved parts of this inner children that we all have, to the degree that they haven't really individuated yet, some of those values are kind of automatic pattern values that you were trained to have in your family growing up.
Yep.
So the thing I want to add to that beautiful bit of wisdom you just shared is when you look, let's say you think you know those. Mm-hmm. And you're right, by the way, that prioritizing what are the most important is crucial.
But whose values are they, right?
Exactly. So to go back and look and go, now, are these mine, really? Mm-hmm. Or are they my family's?
Another layer.
And that's a lot of divorces would probably be prevented if people just did that.
Oh, absolutely.
And those are the 3, and there are definitely things, many, many ways to determine what relationship values are, but you really also need to know what your core values are just as a human being.
Yeah.
And relationship ones become very important, but they also have to, you want to know, for some people, having compatible relationship values is either not on that top 5, or it might be number 4 or 5. And like you said, if you're with somebody for whom that's number 1, mm-hmm. It isn't, automatically fatal. But
right. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but we need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm noticing the time, and I want to honor your time, and I also want to honor the agreement, to our watchers.
Yep.
So is there any way you'd like to conclude and also invite them into your special gifts that you'd like to offer?
You bet. So what I want to make available is, whether you have the book or not, there's
Get the book.
yes, please.
It's great. It's really great.
Available on Amazon. And but in the book, there's all kinds, there's bonus content that is available. And what I'm doing tonight is letting everybody know that you can actually have access to all that bonus content, which really includes, worksheets you can use, like the one I mentioned earlier about questions you can ask to gauge compatibility. A lot of great audio stuff, and particularly because I wrote the book primarily for men, to help men have a relationship with their head out of their ass rather than up it, but also written in a way that women can use it and get value out of it. So
I'm going to interrupt you and say, absolutely, women, get this book seriously. Because when I started reading the book and you kind of said, oh, it's for men, and I haven't read the whole thing yet, but oh my goodness, Geoff, it is a great relationship book for everybody. So young, old, women, men, I hear what you're saying, but seriously, it's filled with wisdom for everybody.
Yeah, there's a lot of good there. So if you'd like to get a hold of that content, then you want to go to Your Relationship Architect. That's what I do. I'm a relationship architect. So go to yourrelationship.com/built to last. And there's a little video there, me at one of my finer video moments, and some info that you can read, but there's a button that you can click on that says order now, and it actually will take you to that bonus content. So get it.
I just put it in the chat box.
Right.
Hopefully I spelt it right. I'm not sure if I did. So architect, ARCHITECT, is that correct?
Yes.
The spelling could be atrocious.
And built to last.
Yep.
Two T's.
Built to last what?
BUILT.
Oh, I spelled it wrong. Okay. Oh, you know what? Built. All right, guys. I'm going to rewrite it, but that's it. Yourrelationshiparchitect.com/built to last. You can get all of his audios and the other bonus worksheets, and definitely worth picking up the book. Anything else you wanted to add before I close for today?
Sure. I just want to let people know that if you want to take a look at how your relationship design is or isn't working and how it could be better, and you'd like to be able to do that without having to pay a penny, then email me at Geoff, and that's GEOFF, at yourrelationshiparchitect.com. And all you got to do is let me know you'd like to do that, or you can go to the website, and right there on the home page, there's a box that says Relationship Design Review. Click on that, and it'll take you all the way through what you need to do. And I'd be happy to help people that are really wanting to know, well, have I designed my relationship well, or is it time for a redesign?
Yep. Beautiful, beautiful. Geoff, thank you so much for being here. My goodness, I wish we had so much more time, because there were lots of golden nuggets that I read in that book. But what we're hearing is communication, compatibility, knowing ourselves, and knowing that there's a good reason that we're in relationships. I mean, guys, relationships, I mean, if we allow ourselves to open up our hearts and embrace our vulnerability in a safe place, because we have to feel safe, right, to a certain extent. And when we can open up our hearts, that's when true intimacy happens. And Geoff's book really talks about so many of these pieces to the puzzle of creating an awesome relationship. And so so thank you all for being here. This is Life Out Loud, and if you want more information about the website or the future shows, it's lifeoutloudwithjudymoon.com, and more information about me there as well. And thanks for being here, and thanks, Geoff. This has been lovely. Thank you so much. And be well, everyone. Go out and have kick-ass relationships with yourself and others.
Amen.
Amen.